You are listening to Christians in Corporate, the podcast that inspires corporate Christians to bring their full selves to work by shining a light on successful corporate executives and leaders across the globe. I'm your host, Paige Rakintarian. Let's get into it. Sometimes going through something so traumatic can actually be the catalyst to your success. This is the story of Nona Jones, a global technology leader who became an executive at the tender age of 23. Nona's worked for some of the biggest tech companies in the world, including Facebook, and she's a preacher, a best-selling author, and an entrepreneur. But if you listen to Nona's story of how she endured such a traumatic childhood full of abuse, rejection, neglect, and even attempted suicide, you'll find that God, as he always does, took what the enemy meant for evil and turned it into good. Nona's story is filled with forgiveness, is filled with hope, and it's filled with God's grace. And she's such a great example of how the pain of your past does not have to control the promise of your future. There are so many lessons that you can learn from Nona's story and apply to your career. I pray this blesses you. Nona, welcome to the Christians in Corporate podcast. Thank you so much for joining. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for having me and for creating this space.
Yes, I'm excited. Okay, so before we get into our conversation, because I know it's going to be a good one, I did want to spend the first few minutes just asking you some quick fire round questions, just so people can get to know you a little bit more. They are this or that questions. So all you need to do is just give me one answer, short and sweet. Don't need to overthink it. Not that deep. And we'll take it from there. All right? All right.
Do it.
First one is work from home or work from the office?
I think from home. It's more productive.
Yeah. Email or live conversation?
Ooh, depends on what it is. If it's complicated, live conversation. If it's transactional, email.
Yeah. Predictability or excitement?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I'm an ESTJ, so I love predictability, but excitement is the spice of life. So every now.
Yeah. Music playlists or podcasts?
Music playlists. Love music.
Yeah. Fruits or veggies?
Fruits.
What's your favorite fruit?
All of them, but I'm into pine berries right now.
Never heard of pine berries before.
They're like white strawberries. And they're so delicious.
That sounds fancy. Never heard of that, ma'am. Cardio or strength training?
Cardio all day. I'm a runner. Please don't give me a weight. I don't like lifting weights. I'll do it if I have to. Cardio all day.
I'm actually the opposite. I love strength training. I cannot stand running. So shout out to you. Sunrise or sunset?
Oh, I love both, but I will say sunset is probably my favorite time of day, especially if I can watch the sunset.
Reading or writing?
Oh,
I knew this would be a difficult one for you. I was like, she likes both.
I'm a voracious reader, so I'll go with reading for sure.
Okay. Road trip or plane trip?
Plane. I have like a 4-hour car limit. I can't. Actually, a 2-hour car limit. I would say plane.
I have a 30-minute car limit. I'm just like, I used to live in London, and I'm like, we take the train there. So
you take the
I'm not doing that. Yeah. And then this is probably the most important one. Mexican cuisine or Nigerian cuisine?
Oh, Nigerian. That's easy.
Yes.
That's easy.
Five.
Yes. I'm all about it. I love it.
Yes. Have you
ice and all of it.
Yes. Have you had jollof rice before?
Of course.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Absolutely.
Because I was like, that is the dish.
Ifo Riro.
Ifo Riro. Okay.
Yeah. No, I love Nigerian. But actually, when I go to London, there is a Nigerian restaurant that I really like. I have not yet been to Nigeria, but there's a Nigerian restaurant that I love in London. So thank you.
Yes. There's lots of Nigerians. There's actually lots of Nigerians in London. So that's probably why there's one that you love there. All right. We're going to get started because I know time is of the essence. It's funny because when I was thinking about this conversation and like what questions to ask you, one of the things that I was thinking is that how would I describe Nona? right? Because I know you are a tech executive, you are a mother of two, you pastor a church with your husband, you're a singer, songwriter, you're an international speaker, a book writer, or an author, I should say, and you're a fitness enthusiast. I saw that you have lost over 100 pounds and you've kept it off over the last 10 years. I think that's a different conversation for a different day, because that is absolutely phenomenal. But going back to the question, if I was to ask you, who is Nona, what would you say?
Nona Jones is a statistically improbable product of God's grace.
Mhm.
That's a very easy question for me, because there is no reason why I should have the resume that I have. There's no reason why I should have the life that I have. According to statistics, because of my childhood, which was very traumatic, a lot of dysfunction, I should either have died by now. I should have been drug addicted, system dependent. I should have had all types of diseases and illnesses and ailments, but I am here because God is a redeemer and he's faithful. And so that's why I live my life on full display of God's goodness, because I know that I'm a statistically improbable product of God's grace.
That's amazing. God's grace is amazing. How it saves us from everything that was meant to happen to us, but it doesn't, because of his grace. That is awesome. And so for those of folks who are listening to this who don't know a little bit about your traumatic past, do you mind just walking through, not even walking through, but just sharing a little bit more about that, just to set the scene and so God can get the glory as we walk through your story?
Absolutely. Well, I'm an only child, and I was born to a mother who did not want to have children. She and my father had been married for 13 years before she got pregnant with me. And then halfway through her pregnancy, my dad started to have stomach pain. And so he went to the doctor to try to figure out what was going on. And he ended up getting diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer. And he was given 6 months to live. My father was so excited about the pregnancy, but he fought as hard as he could. And he passed away shortly before my second birthday. And after that, my mom moved us to the other side of the United States. She met a guy who promised to take care of her and me. But that relationship kind of fell apart after we moved. And I was about maybe 2, 3 at the time. But I do remember a string of men coming in and out of her life and in and out of my life until I was about, I don't know, 5 and a half. She met a guy who became her living boyfriend. And I did not like him from the beginning. He was scary to me. And I told her that. But she told me to just give him a chance, that, he was a good guy and he would warm up to me. Well, she had to go back home because her sister passed away and she couldn't afford another plane ticket. I begged her to take me, but she said she just, she had to go and she couldn't take me because she couldn't afford the ticket. And the very first night that she was gone, he assaulted me. And after it happened, he told me that I better never tell her anything because she would get rid of me. And so for about 2 years, he repeatedly abused me. I didn't say anything because I was afraid that she would get rid of me. But I eventually worked up the courage to tell her. And after I told her, she had him arrested, and I thought the whole situation was over. But on the day of his release from jail, she took me with her to pick him up and brought him back home. And you have to understand, registered sex offenders, like, they are literally mandated by law to stay away from children. My mother brought him back into the home with the child he abused. And so the abuse started again. And it went on for years. I didn't say anything because by then I realized there was no point, because my mother basically chose him over me, knowing what he did. My mother became physically abusive and verbally abusive in addition to what he was doing. And so at the ages of 9 and 11, I tried to take my life. I didn't know anything about God, heaven, hell, or anything. We didn't go to church. I didn't know anything about Jesus or the Bible. But I did just think that whatever was on the other side of death had to be better than what I was experiencing. So that's why I tried to take my life those 2 times. But after my second suicide attempt, a classmate in the 6th grade invited me to go with her to church. And I remember the first time I went, people were just so kind and just loving and affirming. And for the first time, I felt like I was wanted. My mom at that point had told me that she never wanted to have me. She told me that I was a burden to her, that she wished that she never had me. And so by the time I went to church, I found a community of people who were like, you're not a mistake. God loves you. There's a purpose on your life. And so at the age of about 11, I started to read the Bible for myself. I was going to church, by myself. My mom, excuse me, my friend's mother would sometimes take me with them, but if she couldn't take me for some reason, I would call the youth pastor. He and his family would come get me. And I just became really curious about God. And so at the age of 12, I accepted Jesus as Lord of my life. And that became a turning point for me, not because the abuse stopped, because it didn't. The abuse still happened, but it became a turning point because by then I knew that I had a future and I had a hope in Jesus, And so that's what kind of kept me living and pushing. I started to excel in school. I was, making all these good grades. I was leading all these organizations. And I think that kind of set me up for, the success that I've had even in my career is like, there was character and work ethic and things that were built during that very difficult time that built resilience through the power of God that carried me. So that's a bit about my past. Now I say I'm a statistically improbable product of God's grace. I should not be where I am had it not been for the grace of God.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I love the way he placed people in your life to kind of take you off the path that the enemy was trying to get you onto. Right? And those people who took you to church and how you remained diligent and how you read the word. And I love what you said, that like you were able to see hope, right? Jesus is hope, and he gave you hope. He was able to see, or you were able to see that all the answers lie in Jesus. And the fact that you were reading the word at such a young age, attending church at such a young age, and being introduced to the right people at such a young age, I think is beautiful. So we thank God for that. And you kind of touched on it earlier about some of the things that you learned during those times, right? So resilience and character building and work ethic. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because in your book, which I love, and I have to show this, it's called Success from the Inside Out. You talk about success and good success, or success versus good success. I would love for us to unpack a little bit about that. Like, what is the difference between both? Because I think many people think that success is synonymous with good, right? Like if you're successful, it's a good thing, but that clearly isn't the case. So can you just spend a few minutes just unpacking the difference between good success and success?
Would be happy to. Yeah. Well, one day, this was many years ago, I was doing kind of an Old Testament, just, Bible reading plan. And I got to the end of the book of Deuteronomy where Moses died. And I went into the next book of the Bible, which is Joshua. And in the first chapter of Joshua, God essentially kind of, pulls Joshua's coattails. He pulls him to the side because now Joshua is going to become, the leader of the children of Israel. And so he basically pulls Joshua to the side and he's like, look, I need to give you some principles for how to lead so that you will experience success in the promised land. And in Joshua 1:8, God said, meditate on this book of the law day and night, observe to do everything that is written in it, for then you will make your way prosperous and you will have good success. That's in the King James Version. When I read that kind of, it threw me off a bit because it's what you just said is like, you tend to think that success is good by definition. I mean, the very definition of success is to achieve that which you set out to achieve, right? But when the adjective, when the modifier good was used in front of success, I was just like, oh, wait a minute. So there must be a success that isn't good in order for God to say you'll have good success. And in that moment, I think what I realized was that you can achieve the aim that you set out to achieve. But if you are overwhelmed, frustrated, anxious, you are filled with worry and fear at the end of that so-called destination, I don't know that I would call that good success because you have succeeded. Right. But you don't have the fruit of the spirit. You don't have patience, joy, love, long suffering, kindness. You don't have any of that. And so I think the difference between success and good success is that they are synonymous in the sense that you achieve your goal, but where they differ is that you actually experience the fruit of the spirit. And so even looking at that verse where he tells Joshua to meditate in in his word day and night, to observe, to do according to all that is written in it, he says, for then you will make your way prosperous. I think sometimes we pray and we ask God to favor us and make our plans prosperous. And God is saying, if you just do what I say do,
Mm-hmm.
you will make your own way prosperous. You don't have to ask me.
Right,
You'll make your own
right.
way prosperous, and you'll experience the fruit of the
Mm-hmm.
Spirit in your pursuit of success. And I think the reason why that distinction became important for me is because there was a period in my career where I was working at a senior executive level for a large nonprofit, and I was leading the public policy and federal legislative affairs team. And I remember there was a time when I would be at the White House, like, I don't know, every other week. And then there was this one event I went to. This was when the Obamas were in office, and it was this huge, beautiful event at the White House. They were there. A bunch of dignitaries were there, and I remember being in the room, and I'm looking around at all these so-called successful people, and I just felt empty. Like I felt like, man, if this is what it means to make it,
Right.
is this all there is? And that's when I started to study success from a biblical standpoint, that you can technically make it on paper, but be unfulfilled.
Yes.
And that is the difference between
Yeah.
success and success.
I love that. And even when I think about it, I think that there's good success, meaning that's God's success, right?
Yeah.
And then there's world success, and then there's self-success. So I think we can always have our agenda and be like, okay, if I meet this goal, if I become director or VP by this time, hey, look, that's the goal I'm achieving. If I get there, then that's success for me, right? And then there's a world success that, like, if you are a millionaire or whatever, then you are successful. And then there's God's success. And I feel like, and I think you kind of touched this in your book, that achieving God's goal for your life is success, and
Yeah.
that is essentially your purpose, right?
Yes.
And how purpose and good success are kind of very closely linked together, right? Like, you have to know your purpose, because achieving that will obviously give you good success. And one of the things I've actually realized is that the more I read the word, the more I understand the word, obviously, and the more I get closer to understanding what my purpose is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I love going back to what you're saying, Joshua 1:8, is as we meditate on the word, as we declare the word, as we do the word, that that will make our way prosperous, and we'll experience good success, because we keep on reading it, we understand what our purpose is, and eventually we'll get to the place of, or achieve the goal that God has for our life, which is essentially good success. Okay. So thinking super tactically now, would love for you to share what do you believe the blueprint to good success is, right? Because obviously we can talk about good success and all that, but I would love for the listeners to better understand what can they do to ensure that they're on the right path to good success.
I think one of the most important steps is we have to discipline ourselves to ask, why am I pursuing this thing in the first place? I think sometimes we pursue titles, we pursue promotions, we pursue even degrees and credentials, not because those are purpose for us, but because we feel like on the other side of their attainment, we will matter.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be honest about that, because if you are pursuing something because you simply want to matter, or you want people to be like, wow, she's amazing, he's amazing, you want to attain validation in people's eyes, I can promise you there is nothing that you will achieve that will lead to good success. So you have to first ask yourself, why am I pursuing this thing?
Yeah.
Am I pursuing this because I believe that I can make a difference, I can make an impact? Or am I pursuing this because I want people to approve of me?
Yeah.
That kind of is the line of demarcation that I think separates success from good success. What I have found in my career is when I was pursuing something because I wanted other people to validate me, I may have achieved that thing, but I would always feel unfulfilled on the other side of it, because you have to think about it. Let's say you achieve something great. Like, let's say you do get to the C-suite, right? You get to the COO level, CFO level, whatever. People might be like, wow, that's amazing. And they might even give you an applause. But after a while, they're going to move on. And now you're stuck. You're left with this thing that you pursued.
Right.
And if it was only for the validation of other people, that's fickle. And so I do think that tactically, we have got to start asking ourselves why. And I think that's what started to free me, is there was a period in my life, there was a period in my career. I thank God I've been very, very blessed. I've been able to attain quite a few things, awards, recognitions, all that stuff. But as I look back over it, I'm like, you know what? I was pursuing that because I wanted to have standing in other people's eyes. It wasn't that I really wanted to do it. And so I would get the thing and I would just feel unfulfilled. So I do think disciplining ourselves to ask, okay, why am I pursuing this thing? And making sure that it's because I simply want to make an impact. I want to make a difference. I believe that this thing is going to unlock another level of potential and purpose for me, not that it's going to make people like me more.
Right. Yeah.
That is the
Yeah.
absolute wrong
Yeah.
motivation for seeking success.
Yeah. I love that. And also what I found is that once you achieve that thing, you want more, right? So even from like, okay, you don't feel fulfilled, like you still want more, like
Yes.
covetousness, right? You just want more, you want more, you want more and then you realize none of this even matters. And sometimes it's too late.
You know
Sometimes
what?
it's too late.
One of the recognitions I had is that success doesn't have periods, it only has commas. Because you attain a certain level of success. And what happens is it exposes you to the other levels of success that you weren't even aware of before.
Yeah.
And so now, so I'll give you an example. When I started out in my career, I was an independent contributor, like most people, kind of mid-level independent contributor. Well, when I got into that role, I realized, oh, wait, there's a manager role. So it was, okay, I want to be a manager. So I get into this management role and it's like, oh, wait, there's a director. Okay, so now I want to be a director. Oh, wait, there's a VP role. Okay, let me become the VP. Wait, okay, so the VP actually reports to a C level. Okay, I want to be in the C suite. And it's like, no, I want to be the CEO. Then you realize, oh, wait, the CEO, I want to be on the board. I want to be a board member. But then you realize not all boards are created equally. So it's like, I don't want to just be on any board. I want to be on a specific board. And so it never ends. And I think that's why I believe it was the Apostle Paul. He said that godliness with contentment is great gain. Yeah. Contentment isn't about not pursuing anything. Right. Contentment is about in whatsoever state I am in, I am okay. I want to be excellent at what I do. And if God decides that he's going to give me more to do, that's great. But I'm not in a constant state of striving for more. Yeah. That's how you experience peace. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think even just outside the career in general, people just want more. And they want more because of what they see. And they're not sensitive to God's timing, right? They're not sensitive to what God has told them to do. They're just trying to do whatever. But I love how you said that. And I think that another core part of it is once you try and you've made manager, you've made director. Once you get there, you have to realize you got to do the work too. You got to stay there. Listen, you got to stay there. Like you got the title, you got to do the work. That's right. Do the work. It's like the work doesn't go. More responsibility. And so talk a little bit about that in terms of like building a work ethic, because I think that's really, really important. Like, yes, I made it. Now, how do I, build? We'll talk about, let's do work ethic, and then we'll talk about character, which is another component to that. Yeah, I think one of the reason why I called the book Success from the Inside Out is because I do believe that we strive so much for external indicators of success without actually building the internal fortitude that will sustain it. Yeah. I know many people who have attained what we would call great things, but they weren't able to sustain it because they did not have the character to sustain it. So work ethic is really important because, and let me say this before I even explain that. I am not one of those people that believes like you have to, pay your dues. Like there are some people who believe, well, you have to like go up the corporate ladder one rung at a time. I don't believe that. I believe that if you have the work ethic, you can skip rungs on the ladder, but your work ethic simply has to grow. Yes. So I look at my own career. I went from a director to a C level. So like I completely skipped like a few rungs. But the work ethic that I built at the independent contributor level sustained me at the C level. And so what a work ethic is a work ethic says the work is not done until it's done. I am not satisfied with just being in charge. I'm not satisfied with just being the decision maker. I want to make sure that the work, that the product reflects the excellence, to
Yeah.
use a spiritual framing, because that's where I come from, the excellence of the God I serve.
Yeah.
That's how I think. And so I'm relentless. If I put my name on something, you better believe it's going to be done to the absolute best of my ability. I'm not cutting corners.
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow my team to cut corners. I'm going to set a very bold, clear understanding of what excellence is, and then I'm going to hold each of us, all of us, not just the team, myself included, to that standard. And that's what work ethic is. Work ethic is, I'm not satisfied with just having my name at the top of the org chart. I want to make sure that the organization is as strong as possible because my name is at the top of the org chart. Work ethic is.
Right. And the reason why is because we represent Christ in the workplace.
Absolutely.
We are Christ ambassadors. And one thing that you said, I think in your book, was that we may be the only Bible that people see. Right. And so we're trying to go out there and evangelize and talk about how great God is, and our work is sloppy, or we're lazy, or we don't have a standard of excellence. What message are we sending? Right. And so I think that is so important. And then one thing I love also is, as you said, is character. Right. And I think that a lot of people try and take shortcuts with character, and people confuse reputation and character. Right. So reputation essentially is what other people think about you.
Right.
But character is who you really are. And I think that is so important. And definitely character is linked to identity, right? And our identity is in Christ, right? As corporate Christians in the workplace, our identity is in Christ. And one of the things that my pastor used to tell me to do as I was growing up in the faith, and still now, is find all the scriptures that say I am. Right. So I am, the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. I am loved by God. I am, all that. And that really helped me build my identity, also my character. And that, as I go into the workplace now, I know who I am. I know who I am, and I know how to, and so I think that tactically, for anyone listening, I think that is definitely something that as corporate Christians we can do. Go into the word and understand who you are and who you belong to and who you represent. And as you do that, your swag is just different. The swag is absolutely different. And so, okay, one thing I did want to talk to you about is faith, because I think you have a beautiful story. I'd love for you to share it, of how you left the job that you thought you were going to be there forever. I think a lot of people do that, right? Like, oh, I got the job, I'm going to be here for decades. And then God's like, nah, sis, maybe time for you to go. I'm sure you know what story I'm talking about. So I would love for you to share that and some of the core lessons, the key lessons that you learned from that.
Sure. Well, let me first say, when we talk about faith, God gave me a revelation a few years ago that we tend to misuse the word faith, because when we say I have faith, what we tend to mean is I trust God to work this situation out, right? Like we tend to say I have faith because we're saying I trust God. But God helped me realize faith is not me trusting God, because God is God whether I trust him or not. Like he's sovereign, he's in control whether I trust him or not. Faith is not me trusting God. Faith is God being able to trust me. When he speaks, I will obey. That if he calls me into the darkness, if he calls me into the unknown, if he tells me to do something that doesn't make sense, I will immediately obey. And we think about the examples like, of course, there's like, Moses, and there's Abraham, and of course, there's, John the Baptist, and there's all these people who exhibited faith. What they did is they obeyed God. God could trust them. That was faith. So anyway, what happened to me is back in April of 2017, I was in a job that I loved. I was at the C-level of an organization whose mission was near and dear to my heart. And I thought I would be there for at least 20, 25 years. I was maybe 3 years in. And the Lord spoke to me during prayer one day and said, this assignment is over. And I thought I heard incorrectly. And so I prayed days later, because I was like, that is impossible. I love what I'm doing. That's impossible. But I heard the Lord again say, this assignment is over. And I would say that partly because of my childhood and the fact that I was pursuing Jesus at such a young age, I know the voice of God. Like it was so clear to me that it was him. So I prayed and I said, all right, Lord, well, if this assignment is over, what do I do next? And he just told me to resign at the end of that fiscal year. Now, This was in April of 2017. The end of the fiscal year was June 30th, 2017. So I basically had 2 months to leave a job that I loved, no plan B. I went to tell my husband, who, was a pastor, a man full of faith. I said, honey, God told me to resign from my job. And he was like, okay, are the bills resigning too? Like, what? We have a mortgage, we have kids in private school, we have car payments and student loans. Like, what do you mean? God said resign. I was just like, I don't know, but this is what he said. So anyway, fast forward to June 30th, 2017. Now, in my mind's eye, I had been preparing to resign, thinking I would, walk into my boss's office. I'd walk into the CEO's office and just give my letter of resignation, and it would be just a very, formal kind of conversation. Well, as it turns out, June 30th, 2017, we were at a retreat for this large statewide leadership organization that we were both a part of. And it was at this exclusive beachfront resort, beautiful resort. And I'm sitting here like, Lord, you want me to resign at this beautiful beachfront resort? I said, man. But anyway, so I asked her to meet me in a restaurant in the hotel. We met at 1:00 p.m. It was a Friday. Met at 1:00 p.m. I give her my letter of resignation and tell her, I'm going to be pursuing other opportunities. She's shocked and she's like, what do you mean? Like, what can I help? Can I do something to change your mind? Like, what?
Right.
It's just like, I said, no, I just feel like this is the time for me to transition out. And she was like, well, where are you going? Like, I need to be able to tell the board. I was part of the succession plan for the CEO. Like, it was like,
you messed.
And so I said, I'll tell you soon. Now, I didn't know, but I was just like, I'll tell you soon. So we finished talking at 1:40 p.m. I get in my car. The hotel was like 5 hours from my house. So I'm getting on the road, getting ready to drive back home. 25 minutes later, my cell phone rang and it was a 650 area code. It just said San Francisco, California. And I thought it was a telemarketer, so I wasn't going to answer it, but the Holy Spirit said, take the call. So I answered, and this woman says, hi, is this Nona Jones? I said, yeah. She said, I'm calling from Facebook. And I was like, Facebook doesn't call people. Who is this?
Right.
She proceeded to tell me that she was in fact calling from Facebook. And apparently in February of 2017, Mark Zuckerberg changed the mission of the company to focus on community building. And she said that one of the communities that he wanted the company to serve better globally was the faith community. And because the company was like 80% atheist or agnostic, there wasn't really anyone internally who had the ability to build out this strategy. And so she said my name had been given to someone to talk to. And I just told her to send me some information. I'll look at it when I get home because I was driving. I thought they were putting together a committee or an advisory board or something like that. I got home and I opened my email and there's a link to a job description for the head of faith partnerships. And I'm like, what is this? So I tell my husband, I'm like, Facebook just sent me a job description. And he's like, what? Why? I was like, I don't know. But to make a long story short, I ended up getting an offer letter on my birthday. It was like 2 weeks later. The average time that it usually takes from application to offer letter is usually about anywhere from 4 to 6 months. I got it in 2 weeks, never went to the corporate office, never had an in-person interview. As a matter of fact, when they were getting ready to put my offer letter together, they asked me if I could send them my resume because they didn't have my address or anything. So, yeah. So when I say faith is God being able to trust us.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's like God calling you out of something you love, something that you think is going to be your story for the next 20 years. And God saying, nope, we're doing something else. And you're like, what? And then he goes silent.
Yeah. I love that. A couple of things I take away from that. One, obedience is better than sacrifice, right? Yeah. I mean, you heard the word, you heard what God said, you did it. You looked around where you were, and you're like, wait, I'm going to sacrifice this, but you obeyed God, right? And I think that's amazing. Another thing you say is that he meets our faith at our level of obedience, right? And that's exactly what he did. Like he met you, even actually he exceeded. Right? The Bible says he's able to do exceedingly abundantly. Like he gave you a job 30 minutes after you quit. You got the call.
Yeah, literally.
And I think another thing I read was that there was a requirement for the person who had the job to move to California. And you're like, well, this ain't happening because me and my husband have a church here, but they made it work for you.
Yeah. So when my husband and I first got married, so I live in Gainesville, Florida, which is a really random place for someone to live, leading global tech companies. But
Right.
when we first got married, he said that Gainesville would be home because his father's church was there. And so frankly, I was upset about that because I was like, there's no opportunity here.
Right.
There's nothing for me to do here. Like there's the University of Florida, Shands, and the city government. That's it.
Right.
Everybody basically holds their job their entire life. And so I was like, I'm not going to get to advance at all. And so, but I relented. I said, okay, fine, if this is what God is speaking to you. And every job I've ever had has been created from scratch. Every single job. I have led teams remotely from Gainesville, Florida. As a matter of fact, my most recent role as Chief Content and Partnerships Officer at YouVersion is based in Oklahoma City. They've never had a senior executive leader not live in Oklahoma City, leading a global team from Gainesville, Florida. But that again just speaks to when you obey God and you submit to God and you let God worry about the details. He always does exceedingly and abundantly above all we could ask, think, or imagine. We simply have to be willing to just say, all right, Lord, I submit and I obey. I don't understand, but your ways are not my ways. Your thoughts are not my thoughts. And yet you still have a future and a hope plan for me.
Yeah, that's spot on. That's spot on. We are coming to a close. I have so many other questions, but we just don't have the time. But I have to ask this question because I think at the beginning, I listed all these titles that you are, right? Like, how do you balance everything? I think tactically, I would love for you to share with our listeners, how do you balance everything? Ministry, motherhood, marriage, and any other M, right? How do you balance it, Nona?
Man, so many years ago, I stopped thinking about trying to strike work-life balance, and I started thinking about how to create work-life integration. So there is not necessarily a balance that I have, but my work, my life, my ministry, my family, everything is integrated together. So what I do on an annual basis, I figure out, all right, Lord, what are your plans for me this year to the best of my ability? What are your plans for me this year? Then I think about what are the goals that I have for myself. And I plan that out on a quarterly basis, a monthly basis, a weekly basis. And then what I typically will do is on the weekends, I will create my list of priorities for the week based on the different cascading plans that I created for the year, the quarter, the month. And so every minute of my schedule has a name. Every minute of my schedule every day has a name. And whatever that name is for that period of time on my calendar, that is my priority for that time. So if it's my family, that's my priority. If it's a project, that's my priority. If I'm preparing for a speaking engagement, that's my priority. And there isn't necessarily a specific time of the day when it's my priority, but when it is, that's the most important thing I focus on. And so that's how I do it. I don't do to-do lists because I feel like it just ends up being I didn't do this. So I try to live my life based on what's most important at every given moment.
Yeah, I love that. Nona, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been such a rich discussion. I know that everyone listening has learned something from faith to work ethic to the difference between good success and success to work-life balance to learning your story. If people want to learn more about you, where can they reach you?
You can go to my website, which is nonajones.com. You can also follow me across my social platforms, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. My handle is the same on all of them. It's at Nona, not Nora.
I think I know why, because there's Nora Jones, right? The singer.
I was speaking in Australia once, and this was, I think, in Sydney, Australia. And I was backstage and the MC was introducing me and he said, she's a Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter from the United States of America. And I was like, man, he went to the absolute wrong website.
Right.
But okay. Yeah. So it's Nona, not Nora.
Sorry, that's amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I pray that God will continue to bless the work of your hands. You are definitely a light in the workplace, especially in corporate world. And so thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's Such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to the Christians in Corporate podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I would love to hear your feedback. So please be sure to comment down below or connect with me on social media using the handle @PageRakintarin. Oh, wait, and one more thing. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content just like this. See you in the next episode.